Hello, YouTube. We're back with some more Pygame, Snake, going into that object-oriented world. So to start off with, I want to go ahead and start moving us away from screen X, screen Y in our config by introducing some parameters here of screen X is equal to 800 and screen Y is equal to 600. And we will replace the config call with these variables that we set right here. The reason for this is I want to be able to adjust the size at some point if necessary, but I also want to have a default size. So when we call the creation of the window down here below, we can specify that we want 800 by 600, or we can leave it blank and it will assume 800 by 600. Both options are valid, both options are good, and it's good to have a default value and still have the ability to change it if you want to. And that'll be the first step towards getting us off of this screen X, screen Y. The next thing we need to do is lift our food and our snake into an object-oriented style. To do this, we'll start off with defining the class for snake. We'll use an uppercase S. And we'll define our constructor. And we'll start with self.x. We're going to do the same thing here where it's going to be screen X and screen Y, only this time we're not defaulting them. It's going to be screen X divided by 2, and then self.y is going to be equal to screen Y divided by 2. And then we will do our self direction equals none. And our color, self.color is equal to colors red. Then just like we did down below, it's going to be self dot length is 0 and self dot tail is equal to a list. And we'll wipe out both of these. We don't need these anymore. We have our X, our Y, our direction, our color, our length, and our tail. X, Y, direction, length, tail. The things that would be reset will be reset every time we recreate the snake. So next up, we do this to the food. So class food, define our constructor. Okay. And self.x is equal to self.y is equal to, and then our color is equal to, going to be, sorry, self.color is equal to colors light blue. For the food positioning, we're going to use the same items down here, up here. So we can now take these out of play. Every time we initiate the food, it's going to use the screen X, screen Y. So we're going to introduce the same thing here, screen X, screen Y, because we want this to change. We want this to be able to change with things as it goes. So instead of this screen X, it's going to be the screen X parameter. And instead of that screen Y, it's going to be the screen Y parameter. And this will move us away from using that screen X, screen Y. Now we're not quite ready to move away on the block size, but we'll get there. We can take block size and speed and put them in the window, but I'm not too worried about it just yet. Now that we have food and snake redefined, we need to be able to pass the snake and the food into the draw game, which is going to happen later. And we're gonna come down here, and instead of reset snake, it's now lowercase snake is equal to a snake object from that class. And then the same thing with food. Lowercase food is equal to a food object from that class. So now we have this snake direction thing here. And we're going to find and replace on these because we can do uh, snake dot direction now. And that should line up with snake dot direction here. So we just find and replace all of these. Now I want to see them actually get replaced because I want to make sure that they go the way they're supposed to. And as you can see, there's none left, so that's fine. Next up, we have to deal with this snake X. And that is now going to be snake uppercase X. And we find and replace. No more results. So let's switch to Y, snake Y, and start replacing these. Okay. Next up, it's going to be the snake color, and we're going to replace it with snake.color. There's only a couple of spots for that. And then we got to do the tail and the length. So snake tail needs to get replaced with snake.tail. So now we can replace it in these locations. Now snake tail here is a little interesting. We just go through. Okay. And then this one is snake.length. And we're going to replace it, or its length, and then we're going to replace it with the snake.length. So you can see the formatting is going to completely change in these locations. Now here at this randomized food location, what we're going to do is we're actually going to delete the food and then create another food object. There we go. But as you can see here, we also still have to go through our food X and food Y. So what we're going to do is copy that and put it in here. And food X is going to now be food.x. And we'll just replace. Same thing goes with food Y. We're going to do the same, replace. Okay. Now food color here can be replaced with food.color as well, which I think this only happens in one place, so we're not going to bother going after it too hard. Now down here where we're calling snake, if you recall, we set up a screen X, screen Y, and the same thing happens here on food. Okay. So screen X, screen Y, where do we get that from? Well, we're going to get that from the display dot X, comma, display dot Y. We need to use the same set of information in the food creation here and here. And that should give us playable functionality there, but we don't have a way of stopping. So what we're going to do here is right before the tick, we're going to do if Pygame, and it's going to be if not Pygame. We're checking to make sure it's not true. We'll delete food and delete snake because we're setting Pygame to false, so we'll come back out to this level when it only comes in and creates the snake and the food there. Now, the reason we're doing it here is because if we delete the food completely anywhere before here, this isn't, if we delete the snake particularly, we can't do these evaluations. So it has to happen towards the end, or we have to do it with a break. Because we could take this delete food and delete snake and we can put it up here, but we would have to do a break to break out of the loop. So we're trying to do a little bit of a clean loop where we're not using break to break out of it. We're just going to use the Boolean value to break out of it. So when we're ready to break out of it, at the very end of that last loop, it should delete the food and delete the snake. So let's save this and let's give it a quick trial run. Let's see what we've got. So far, so good. Oh no. Draw game missing 2 required positional arguments, snake and food. I forgot to put the snake and food in right here. Now, it is okay to have mistakes when you're first setting everything up. It is important that we can see what it is telling us and saying draw game is missing the 2 required positional arguments, snake and food. So now I'm giving it the snake and the food. So now we should be able to run. Everybody makes mistakes here and there, and it is okay to see them. So I want you guys to make sure that you are okay going through this. When you run into an error, don't panic. Look at that error and think about it logically. What is missing? We're going to get into more debugging and stuff later on too. So I want to make sure that you guys are prepared for, we're going to have errors and we're going to resolve them in the video. Like that's going to be more of the coming items because we're getting into more and more complex items, and I don't want you guys to get it in your head that every single time it should be perfect. That's not how programming works. It's not every single time it's going to be perfect. It's trial and error sometimes. But as you can see, our snake game's still operating. So we've lifted the snake to an object. We've lifted the food to an object. Let's run into ourselves. There we go. Oh, almost. There we go. I almost caught my tail. I managed to barely miss it. So that's still working. And look, it reset the food location, right? So there's the food. We run into a wall, resets the food location when we do the new game. So it's resetting our snake and it's resetting the food location because we're using new instances of the objects. This cuts down on our reset snake location and randomize food location because we're doing it all as part of the initialization of that object. There is still more to go, but I feel like this has been a reasonable amount of time for this video, and I hope that you all enjoyed this. If you have questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below.